When my son got married, I didn't say I inherited $7 million from my husband. Thank God. I stood outside the wedding venue, smoothing down my navy dress for the 10th time. My hands trembled slightly as I checked my reflection in the car window. Today was supposed to be perfect. My son Marcus was getting married. I had lost my husband Thomas 3 years ago, and seeing Marcus this happy should have filled the emptiness in my heart. But as I walked through those decorated doors, I felt a knot forming in my stomach. Victoria, my new daughter-in-law, spotted me immediately. Her smile was bright, but her eyes scanned me from head to toe. "Oh, Clara," she said loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "How charming." Very understated. Several relatives turned to look. Her mother, Patricia, joined us with a pitying expression. "It must be difficult," Patricia said, touching my arm. "Managing on your late husband's modest estate. So brave of you to come." My cheeks burned. I forced a smile and nodded, feeling dozens of eyes on me. Whispers started rippling through the crowd. I was being judged, measured, and found lacking before the ceremony even began. During the reception, I tried mingling with Marcus's cousins and old family friends. I asked about their lives, their children, hoping to find some warmth and connection. But within minutes, Victoria appeared at my elbow like a shadow. She smoothly redirected every conversation, talking about her family's vacation home in the Hamptons, her father's business connections, and the expensive honeymoon Marcus had planned. "Of course, we're very fortunate," Victoria said, her hand on my shoulder in a gesture that felt more possessive than kind. "Not everyone has the same advantages." Her eyes flicked to me meaningfully. The relatives nodded politely, but I could see them sizing me up differently now. I was the poor relation, the widow struggling to get by. An old friend of Thomas's approached, someone I hadn't seen in years. "Clara, how are you managing?" he asked. Before I could answer, Victoria interrupted. "She's doing her best. It's hard being out of your league socially, isn't it?" She smiled sweetly, but the words cut deep. I felt my face flush. I was being erased, made invisible at my own son's wedding. I excused myself and slipped away to a quiet room near the back of the venue. My chest felt tight, and tears threatened to spill over. I sat on a cushioned bench and took deep breaths, trying to calm myself. How had things gotten so bad? When did I become someone to pity or mock? I thought about Thomas, my wonderful husband who had worked so hard his whole life. He had been humble, never flashy with money. When he passed away, I had been drowning in grief, barely functioning. The lawyer had explained the inheritance, $7 million from Thomas's investments and life insurance. I had been stunned, unable to process it. I never told Marcus. I never told anyone. The money sat quietly in accounts, untouched mostly, because I was too heartbroken to think about it. I lived simply in our old house, kept my old car, and wore my old clothes. Now, sitting here humiliated at my son's wedding, I realized that secret had become my shield. Thank God I had kept it hidden. These people didn't deserve to know. I returned to the reception, composing myself with effort. I spotted Marcus across the room, laughing with Victoria's brothers. My heart ached when I heard him chuckle at something Victoria said, another subtle jab about different backgrounds. He caught my eye and looked uncomfortable, but he didn't come to my defense. Later, he found me alone by the dessert table. "Mom, I'm sorry about earlier," he whispered, glancing around nervously. "Victoria didn't mean anything by it. She's just, used to a certain lifestyle." I stared at my son, searching his face for the boy I raised. "Marcus, she was deliberately hurtful," I said quietly. He shifted his weight, looking torn. "She's under a lot of stress with the wedding. And well, her family is kind of, they have expectations." My heart sank. My own son was making excuses for them. "I understand," I said, though I didn't. "Congratulations on your marriage." He kissed my cheek and hurried back to his bride, leaving me standing there alone, realizing I needed to protect my own dignity now. The next week, Patricia invited me to lunch at an upscale restaurant downtown. I should have known better, but I went hoping to build bridges. She spent the first 20 minutes talking about Victoria's successful career and their family's real estate portfolio. Then she leaned forward conspiratorially. "Clara, I wanted to discuss something delicate," she said. "Your house, that sweet little place Thomas left you." I'm sure it's filled with family treasures. I nodded slowly, unsure where this was headed. Victoria mentioned some lovely antique pieces. Family heirlooms, really. I think it would be a wonderful gesture if you passed some along to the newlyweds. A show of goodwill. My jaw nearly dropped. She was asking me to hand over my belongings? Those items have sentimental value, I said carefully. Patricia waved her hand dismissively. Of course, dear. But Marcus is your only child. Eventually, they'll inherit everything anyway. Why not share the joy now? Her smile was practiced, but her eyes were calculating. I felt anger rise in my chest but kept my voice steady. I'll think about it, I said, knowing I had no intention of giving them anything. The worst moment came during Victoria's reception toast. She stood gracefully, champagne glass raised, her white dress shimmering under the lights. I want to thank everyone who made this day possible, she began. The room quieted, all eyes on her. Especially my parents, who have given us so much support and guidance. Then her gaze landed on me. And of course, Marcus's mother, Clara. She's shown such resilience. Raising Marcus mostly on her own after his father passed. Making do with so little. It's truly inspiring how some people can be happy with such simple lives. The room erupted in polite laughter. Some guests looked uncomfortable, but others nodded in agreement. I felt my face burn with humiliation. She had just publicly branded me as poor and simple-minded in front of everyone important in Marcus's life. I kept my smile frozen in place, but inside I was crumbling. Across the room, I noticed an older cousin of Thomas's watching me with sympathy. Her shocked expression told me she saw through Victoria's cruelty. At that moment, something hardened inside me. I would not let them break me. After the wedding, I scheduled a meeting with Thomas's lawyer, Mr. Harrison. He was a kind man who had helped me through the worst days after losing my husband. Clara, good to see you, he said warmly. What can I do for you? I explained my situation carefully, leaving out the wedding humiliation but focusing on my desire to better understand the trust Thomas had left. Your husband was very thorough, Mr. Harrison explained, pulling out documents. The main inheritance is in your name, completely private. But there's also a discretionary trust he set up that you can access for investments or charitable giving. Nobody else needs to know about any of it unless you choose to tell them. Felt relief wash over me. My financial independence was completely secure and completely private. As I was leaving, Mr. Harrison mentioned something interesting. Funny thing, I ran into Victoria's cousin at a conference last month. Bethany, I think? She practices family law. We got talking, and she seemed concerned about Victoria's character. My ears perked up. Really? Mr. Harrison nodded. Just a feeling I got. She might be worth talking to. A few days later, Marcus and Victoria asked me over to see their wedding photos. I went with trepidation, but I was curious to see the professional shots. Victoria scrolled through them on her laptop, pointing out her favorite moments. I noticed something strange. In almost every group photo, I was either cropped out or positioned at the edge where I could easily be removed. The photographer really captured everything beautifully, Victoria said, not seeming to notice my observation. But I noticed. In the family portraits, I was barely visible. In the reception shots, I was in the background or completely absent. It was as if they were erasing me from Marcus's big day. Then Victoria clicked to the proof folder by accident. There I saw a candid shot the photographer had taken when I didn't know I was being watched. I was standing near a window, natural light illuminating my face. Despite everything, I looked dignified, strong even. My posture was straight, my expression calm and composed. I secretly asked the photographer for that image later. It became my reminder that no matter how they tried to diminish me, I still had strength and grace inside me. 2 weeks after the wedding, I attended a casual dinner party hosted by one of Marcus's former college friends. It was supposed to be relaxing, but Victoria's family was there too. I kept to myself mostly, sipping wine and making small talk. Then I overheard Patricia talking to her husband in the corner of the patio. The Riverside property deal is almost finalized, she was saying. We'll buy it through the shell company, flip it in 6 months, and nobody will know we manipulated the zoning variance. Her husband nodded. As long as the council members stay quiet, we're golden. Easy 2 million profit. I pretended to be interested in the garden roses, but my mind was racing. This was insider trading territory, possibly fraud. And suddenly, I realized something important. My $7 million meant I could play in the same financial leagues they did. I had leverage if I needed it. The real estate world was Thomas's old domain, and I still knew people. For the first time since the wedding, I smiled genuinely. Knowledge was power, and I was learning their secrets. Marcus came to visit me alone one evening, looking troubled. We sat in my kitchen, the same one where I'd made him breakfast throughout his childhood. "Mom, I need to talk," he said quietly. I waited, my hands wrapped around a tea mug. "I know Victoria and her mother have been difficult," he began. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "They have high standards, and I'm caught in the middle. I didn't want to hurt you at the wedding, but I felt so much pressure to keep everyone happy." His eyes were genuinely pained. I softened slightly. My son was naive, not malicious. "Marcus, I'm your mother. I'll always love you. But you need to see what's happening. Victoria isn't just having high standards, she's being deliberately cruel." He looked down at his hands. "I know. I'm starting to see it." I reached across and squeezed his hand. "Then open your eyes fully. Watch how she treats other people, not just me. See if her words match her actions." He nodded slowly. I decided then that I wouldn't confront Victoria directly, not yet. Instead, I would guide Marcus gently to the truth, letting him discover it himself. The following month, Victoria called me with barely concealed excitement. "Clara, Marcus and I are looking at houses. We found a perfect one, but we need help with the down payment. Could you contribute?" I felt my stomach tighten. "How much are you asking?" I said carefully. "Only 50,000, she said breezily. "I mean, you have the house Thomas left you. You could take a home equity loan or something." The presumption in her voice made my blood boil. She assumed I had assets to borrow against, that I owed them financial support. "Actually, Victoria, I'm not in a position to do that right now," I said firmly. There was a long pause. "Really? But Marcus is your son. I thought you'd want to help us." Her voice had turned cold. "I do want Marcus to be happy," I said. "But I can't give you $50,000. Another pause, heavier this time. "I see. Well, I'll let Marcus know his mother isn't willing to invest in his future." She hung up abruptly. I sat there, knowing I'd just offended them deeply. But they had no idea I could write that check 100 times over without blinking. The satisfaction of keeping them ignorant felt surprisingly good. Patricia hosted a charity luncheon the next month and invited me, probably to show off her social connections. I attended wearing a simple but elegant dress, keeping my head high. Patricia spent the entire afternoon name-dropping politicians she knew, business leaders her husband golfed with, celebrities she'd met at galas. She cornered me near the dessert buffet. "Clara, I hear you worked as a bookkeeper before Thomas passed? How quaint." Her tone dripped with condescension. Several women nearby were listening. "I did bookkeeping, yes," I confirmed. "Thomas and I both worked hard." Patricia laughed lightly. "Oh, I've never had to work a day in my life. My husband takes care of everything." But I had been busy behind the scenes. Before the luncheon, I'd reached out to some of Thomas's old business contacts, people who remembered him fondly and respected his work. One had mentioned a consulting opportunity with a major firm that needed financial analysis expertise. I'd accepted, saying nothing to anyone. That connection would prove valuable soon. I was building my own network quietly, matching Patricia's connections with substance instead of show. I learned through Bethany, Victoria's cousin who had become a quiet ally, that Victoria was trying to land a major client for her marketing firm. The client was a tech startup looking for someone to handle their brand launch. I happened to know the startup's CFO, he had worked with Thomas years ago. I made a single anonymous call to a mutual colleague, mentioning that Victoria's firm had a reputation for overselling and underdelivering. I provided no specifics, just planted a seed of doubt. It was subtle, nothing that could be traced back to me. The colleague thanked me for the heads up and said they'd do their due diligence. 2 weeks later, Bethany told me Victoria had lost the client to a competitor. Victoria was furious, convinced someone had sabotaged her but unable to figure out who. I felt a small surge of satisfaction. This was just the beginning. I was learning to move in the shadows, using my knowledge and connections without leaving fingerprints. The balance of power was starting to shift, even if nobody realized it yet. Marcus invited me to a family dinner at his and Victoria's new apartment. I dreaded going but couldn't refuse without raising suspicion. The evening started tense. Patricia and her husband were there, along with Victoria's brother. The conversation circled around money, their recent investments, expensive purchases, travel plans. Then Victoria turned to me. "Clara, you've been so secretive lately. Always busy with something. What are you hiding?" Her tone was playful, but her eyes were sharp. The table went quiet. "I'm not hiding anything," I said calmly. "Just keeping myself occupied." "It's just odd," Victoria continued. "You live so modestly, yet you turned down our request for help. Makes one wonder about your priorities." Patricia nodded in agreement. "Family should support family, dear." I took a breath, keeping my composure. "I support Marcus in many ways. Not all support is financial." Victoria's expression hardened. "Well, maybe if you'd been more successful, you'd understand the importance of investing in the next generation." The accusation hung in the air. She was calling me stingy and unsuccessful. But I smiled serenely. "Success comes in many forms, Victoria. Not everyone measures it the same way." Marcus looked uncomfortable, but I had planted another seed. Other relatives at the table looked thoughtful. I started using portions of my inheritance strategically, but quietly. I funded a community scholarship program for underprivileged students in Thomas's name, donated to the local library's renovation project, and supported a women's shelter that needed supplies. I made sure these contributions were documented but not publicized, yet. People in town started noticing. The librarian thanked me publicly at a town meeting. The shelter director mentioned my generosity in their newsletter. Word spread slowly through our community that Clara, the modest widow, was actually quite giving and civic-minded. I attended events, volunteered my time, and built genuine relationships. Meanwhile, Victoria had been making splashy donations to high-profile causes, always making sure her name was attached for maximum visibility. But her contributions were smaller and more self-serving. People were beginning to notice the contrast, my quiet competence versus her loud showmanship. One evening, Marcus mentioned that someone at his office had asked if he was related to that wonderful Clara who funded the scholarship program. He looked surprised, almost confused. "Mom, I didn't know you were doing all this." I smiled gently. "There's a lot you don't know about me, sweetheart." The tension between Marcus and Victoria was growing. I could see it in his eyes when they visited, and hear it in his voice on phone calls. One night, he called me late. "Mom, Victoria and I had a huge fight. She said you've been deliberately undermining her in the community." I listened quietly. "She thinks you're trying to make her look bad with all your charity work. She's convinced you're turning people against her." I sighed. "Marcus, I'm just trying to honor your father's memory by helping others. If that makes Victoria uncomfortable, maybe she should examine why." He was quiet for a moment. "She also said you must have money hidden somewhere, that you're playing some kind of game." My heart skipped. "What do you think, Marcus?" I asked. I think I don't really know what to think anymore." The next day, I saw Victoria for coffee. She was furious, barely containing it. "Whatever you're doing, Clara, stop it. You're making me look bad, and I won't tolerate it." I met her gaze steadily. "I'm doing nothing to you, Victoria. I'm simply living my life." But she had caught on that I wasn't as powerless as she'd thought. Good. The annual Riverside Charity Gala was the social event of the season. Patricia and Victoria had been planning their attendance for months, making sure everyone knew about their involvement and their expensive table sponsorship. I bought a ticket quietly and attended in a simple black dress, nothing flashy. During the auction portion, I bid on several items, winning a few with generous amounts that surprised people at my table. Then came the announcement of major donors. My name was called. I had made a significant contribution to the Children's Hospital wing renovation. The amount wasn't disclosed, but it was substantial. The room applauded. The event organizer praised my long history of quiet generosity and community spirit. I stood briefly, smiled, and sat back down. Across the room, Patricia's face had gone pale. Victoria looked stunned. Their own donations, announced minutes later, seemed small and self-promotional in comparison. People came up to me all evening, thanking me, asking about my late husband's legacy, treating me with genuine respect and warmth. I was no longer the pitiful widow, I was a woman of substance and dignity. Patricia tried to approach me once, but I was surrounded by admirers. Her embarrassment was visible. Through Bethany, I learned something explosive. Victoria had been telling everyone her family was worth tens of millions, that her father owned multiple successful businesses. But Bethany revealed the truth. Most of it was leveraged debt and appearances. Patricia and her husband lived beyond their means, constantly borrowing to maintain their lifestyle. The Riverside property deal I'd overheard? It had fallen through because they couldn't secure the financing. Their shell company was nearly bankrupt. Victoria herself was drowning in credit card debt, using Marcus's income to cover her expenses while pretending to be wealthy. I asked Bethany to document what she could, bank statements, loan applications, anything public record. Bethany, who had grown tired of her cousin's lies and arrogance, was happy to help. Victoria's been lying to Marcus about everything, Bethany said. She even told him her trust fund would kick in after marriage, but there is no trust fund. This was the leverage I needed. Not to destroy Victoria, but to show Marcus the truth about who he'd married. The time to act was approaching. I started having more one-on-one time with Marcus, taking him to lunch, going for walks like we used to when he was younger. I never directly criticized Victoria, I didn't need to. Instead, I asked questions. How's Victoria's job going? Has she mentioned her trust fund lately? How are you two managing expenses? Marcus started opening up. We're actually struggling, Mom. Victoria spends more than she makes, and she keeps saying her parents will help, but they never do. She got angry when I suggested we budget. I listened sympathetically. That must be frustrating. And another thing, he continued. She told me before we got married that she had investments and savings. But I've never seen any proof. When I ask, she gets defensive and changes the subject. I saw the doubt in his eyes, the slow realization that he'd been deceived. What should I do? He asked. Trust your instincts, I said gently. Pay attention to actions, not words. The truth always comes out eventually. I could see his internal struggle, loyalty to his wife versus the growing evidence of her dishonesty. But I let him wrestle with it. He needed to come to his own conclusions. The opportunity for my masterstroke came when a major development project was announced in Riverside, the same area where Patricia's family had tried their fraudulent scheme. The project needed investors and community partners. Using my contacts from Thomas's network, I quietly arranged to be part of the investment group. At the public announcement meeting, Patricia and her husband showed up, clearly hoping to insert themselves into the deal. But when the lead developer introduced the investment partners, my name was on the list. Patricia's face went white. Her husband looked confused. Victoria, who had accompanied them, stared at me in shock. Clara is a valued partner, the developer said. Her late husband was a respected figure in real estate development, and she's continuing his legacy. I smiled modestly, saying nothing more. The meeting continued with discussions of timelines and returns. Afterward, Patricia tried to approach me. Clara, I didn't know you were involved in real estate. Her voice was strained. There's a lot you don't know about me, Patricia, I said pleasantly. Victoria stood nearby, her confident facade cracking. She had underestimated me completely, and now she knew it. The following week, Patricia made a desperate power move. She hosted a large family gathering and tried to position herself as the matriarch, making decisions about holiday plans, family traditions, and even suggesting that Marcus and Victoria should host future events instead of me. She was trying to cut me out of my own son's life. But her arrogance backfired. Several family members pushed back, asking why she thought she could dictate family traditions that weren't even hers. One uncle pointed out that I was Marcus's mother and should obviously be included in planning. Patricia flustered, trying to regain control, but her mask had slipped. She made a critical error. She implied that Marcus was better off focusing on Victoria's family connections for his career advancement. The statement revealed her manipulative nature. Even Marcus looked uncomfortable. Mom has always supported my career, he said quietly. I don't need Victoria's family for that. Patricia backpedaled quickly, but the damage was done. Family members were whispering, exchanging knowing glances. My careful, quiet influence had set the stage perfectly. Patricia had exposed her own arrogance without me having to say a word against her. At a weekend barbecue at Marcus's apartment, I casually mentioned that I was exploring some new opportunities. I've realized I have more financial freedom than I thought, I said, keeping my tone light and vague. Thomas was more successful than even I knew. Victoria's head snapped toward me. What do you mean? She asked sharply. I shrugged. Just that I've been reviewing things with the lawyer. Thomas left me better situated than I realized. I'm thinking about traveling, maybe doing some investing. I sipped my lemonade innocently. The look on Victoria's face was priceless, confusion mixed with calculation mixed with rising panic. How much are we talking about? Patricia asked bluntly. I smiled mysteriously. Enough to be comfortable. Thomas was always wise with money. I changed the subject quickly, but the seed was planted. For the rest of the day, I caught Victoria and Patricia whispering intensely, casting glances at me. Marcus asked me about it later. Mom, is there something you haven't told me about Dad's estate? I looked at my son thoughtfully. There's plenty I haven't told you, Marcus. But that's because you never asked, and I didn't think it was important. Would you like to know? His expression was complex, curiosity mixed with guilt. The revelation came at a community foundation meeting where I was being honored for my contributions over the past year. Marcus, Victoria, Patricia, and several family members attended. The foundation director gave a speech about my generosity, thanking me for my transformative donation to the Children's Hospital renovation and the scholarship fund. Then came the moment. Clara's late husband, Thomas, left a legacy of wise investing and community care. Clara has continued that legacy, contributing over $1 million to local causes from the inheritance Thomas left her. The room gasped. Marcus's jaw dropped. Victoria went completely pale. The total estate, the director continued, reading from prepared remarks I'd approved, was valued at $7 million. Clara has chosen to honor Thomas's memory by giving back to the community he loved while maintaining her modest, dignified lifestyle. The applause was thunderous. I stood, accepted the recognition gracefully, and returned to my seat. Victoria looked like she might be sick. Patricia's face was a mask of shock and rage. They had spent months mocking me, treating me as poor, when I'd been wealthier than them all along. Marcus stared at me with a mixture of awe and confusion. The aftermath was swift. Marcus came to my house the next day alone. Mom, why didn't you tell me? He asked, his voice shaking. I looked at my son with love and sadness. Because after your father died, I was grieving. The money felt meaningless. And then when Victoria and her family started treating me poorly, I realized something important. What? He asked. That their respect was conditional on my perceived wealth. They didn't value me as a person, Marcus. If I'd told you, told anyone, everything would have changed. Victoria married you thinking I was poor. That tells you everything about her character. Marcus sat down heavily. She lied to me about so much. Her trust fund, her family's money, everything. Bethany told me the truth yesterday. He looked broken. I'm so sorry, Mom. I let them treat you horribly. I hugged him. You were trying to keep peace. I understand. But now you see who she really is. Victoria tried one last manipulation. She called Marcus crying, claiming I'd humiliated her deliberately, that I was cruel for hiding the money. But Marcus had finally seen through her lies. No, he told her. My mother was protecting herself from people like you. 3 months later, Marcus had filed for annulment based on Victoria's fraudulent misrepresentations about her finances. It was ugly but necessary. Patricia tried to threaten legal action but had no grounds. Victoria's reputation in our community was destroyed. People remembered how she'd mocked and belittled me. I didn't gloat or celebrate their downfall. Instead, I continued my quiet work, supporting causes I believed in, building genuine relationships, and helping Marcus heal from the betrayal. He moved back home for a while, and we rebuilt our relationship properly. The money that Victoria and Patricia had coveted so desperately, It became a tool for good, funding scholarships, community projects, and supporting people who truly needed help. Thomas would have been proud. I was no longer the pitiful widow they could mock. I was a woman of strength, dignity, and purpose. Marcus learned a hard lesson about character and integrity. And me? I learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, staying true to yourself, and letting dishonest people reveal their own nature. The $7 million wasn't the real treasure, it was the dignity I'd maintained and the truth that finally emerged. I had won not through cruelty, but through patience, grace, and quiet strength. That was the greatest victory of all.